don't just vanish. But on a chilly January night in Greensboro, North Carolina, someone did. Her name was Tiara Williams, just 19 years old. Smart, focused, grounded. She was the kind of person who made everyone else feel safe. The kind of girl who didn't make reckless choices. The kind of daughter every parent dreamed of. But in less than an hour, she was gone. No screams, no struggle, no goodbyes. She left her apartment, supposedly to meet someone. She never came back. And what haunts this case the most is that it happened on a day Tiara was full of joy. She had just been accepted into nursing school. Her future was right there in front of her, and then something or someone took it away. Her car keys were still in the apartment. Her phone died shortly after. Her family says she never would have gone far without letting them know. The police did what they could, but nearly a decade later, we're left with more questions than answers. And the one that echoes the loudest is this. Who did Tiara trust enough to step outside that night, and why hasn't she been seen since? This is not just another missing person case. This is a riddle soaked in silence, stitched together with inconsistencies, and sealed by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. My name is Dominic, and this is True Crimes by Dominic. If you're new here, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the stories that too often get buried. And while you're here, drop a comment below. Do you think Tiara knew the person she left with? Or was this a calculated ambush masked as a friendly meetup? I want to hear your theories. Because somewhere out there, someone still knows what happened to Tiara Williams. And they've kept that secret for far too long. Tyarra Williams had always been mature for her age. When her parents separated at just 7 years old, a lot of kids might have crumbled, but not Tiara. Instead of folding under the pressure, she stepped up without being asked. She became a quiet pillar for her mother, a steady presence in the house when everything else was shifting. Even at that young age, she understood more than most children should, and that sense of responsibility of always showing up for the people she loved only grew stronger as she got older. She thrived in school. Tiara was enrolled at Dudley High School in Greensboro, and by the time she reached her junior year, something clicked. She took a course in early childhood education, and it was like the missing piece of a puzzle fell into place. She found her passion working with kids, but not just any kids, children with disabilities, kids who needed extra care, extra patience, and someone with a heart big enough to hold them. And Tiara was that person. She didn't just pass the class, she excelled in it. It was no surprise. She was empathetic, nurturing, and incredibly attuned to other people's emotions, traits that had been obvious, even when she was a toddler helping care for her baby brother, Cannon. That same selfless instinct stayed with her into her teens. But Tiara wasn't all academics and caregiving. She had a social side too. A bright, beautiful girl with a bubbly personality, she had friends, ambitions, and a natural charisma that drew people in. And like most teenagers, she wanted to explore her independence, especially as social media became a bigger part of teenage life. That's where the tension with her mom started to show. Her mother, Danielle, was protective, rightfully so. She understood the darker corners of the internet and the risks that came with being a young woman online. So when Tiara asked to open a Facebook account, there were conditions. Danielle had to be added as a friend, and she needed access to monitor what was going on. Tiara agreed at first, but as the years passed and she grew into herself, those boundaries began to feel a little too tight. She wanted more freedom, more space to make her own decisions. It wasn't rebellion, it was growing up. Eventually, during her senior year, Tiara made a decision. She wanted to move in with her grandmother, Vanessa. Now, this wasn't some dramatic fallout or teenage standoff. It was actually a mutual agreement. Everyone thought it was a good idea, and it's important to note her grandmother lived in the same apartment complex. Tiara wasn't moving across town or cutting ties. She was literally going just a building or two away from her mom's place at the Stony Brook Apartments in Greensboro. And honestly, it wasn't just about independence. Tiara said she didn't like the idea of her grandma living alone. That same caretaker instinct was still running deep. Of course, her grandma Vanessa always laughed and said she was pretty sure Tiara just liked her cooking better. Maybe it was a little bit of both. Even after she moved in, Tiarra was still constantly bouncing between the two apartments. Her relationship with her mom and brother never changed. The family was tight, they were connected, and everyone respected the decisions being made. It was clear Tiarra wasn't just a good student or a caring sibling. She was a young woman with a plan, and everyone around her believed in her. In 2014, Tiarra proudly graduated from high school. She knew what she wanted to do with her life, but she also knew the value of preparing herself for the next big step. So she took a brief pause, a single semester off, just to regroup and make sure she was ready for college. By the time December 2015 rolled around, she was ready. She enrolled at Guilford Technical Community College to study early childhood education, the same field that had inspired her back in high school. The plan was simple: start the new year strong, get that degree, and build a future helping kids who needed someone like her in their corner. She spent the holidays surrounded by her loved ones, laughing, eating, and planning for the future. She was excited, motivated, focused. But that bright future never came, because just a week into the new year, on January 7, 2016, Tyarra Williams stepped outside her grandmother's apartment and disappeared. That step forward into the future became her last known move. And the worst part? No one saw it coming. Thursday, January 7, 2016, started like the beginning of a brand new chapter for Tyarra Williams. That morning, around 7:30 a.m., she woke up filled with nerves, but mostly excitement. It was the kind of excitement that comes when you know you're stepping into the next phase of your life. She got dressed, grabbed what she needed, and headed to Guilford Technical Community College to finalize everything for the upcoming semester. She had paperwork to wrap up for financial aid, needed to get her student ID issued, and had her class schedule ready to go. She was supposed to start classes the following week. It was finally happening. The dream she'd carried since her junior year of high school, to work with children and make a difference in their lives, was now becoming reality. Later that day, around 6 p.m., Tiarra stopped by her mom's apartment, just a short walk away from where she lived with her grandmother. She was buzzing with energy. You could see it all over her face. According to her mom, Danielle, Tiarra was glowing, giddy even. She pulled out her new student ID, proudly showing it off, and shared every detail about how the day went. They laughed, made plans to go back to school shopping the next day, something they both enjoyed. They were going to grab books, supplies, and everything Tiarra needed to start strong. It was a moment full of optimism, the kind of ordinary but precious day that families remember forever. Tiarra's boyfriend at the time, Aaron, dropped by that evening too. He also lived in the same apartment complex, Stony Brook, and was close friends with her younger brother, Cannon. While the two boys hung out, playing video games, Tiarra kept a promise she'd made weeks earlier. She started taking down her mom's Christmas tree. She had begged her mom to put it up during the holidays, but also vowed she'd be the one to remove it. Now it was January, and the living room still smelled like pine needles and twinkled with leftover lights. Even while packing up ornaments, a chore most people dread, Tiarra was still in high spirits. That was the kind of mood she was in. When she was done, the three of them, Tiarra, Aaron, and Cannon, walked back to her grandmother's place to have dinner together. It was just a regular evening. Nothing felt off. After dinner, they all slumped onto the couch to relax, Cannon and Aaron watching football, while Tiarra stayed glued to her phone as usual. Her phone, according to everyone who knew her, was almost an extension of her body. She was rarely ever seen without it in hand. But then somewhere around 8:30 p.m., the mood shifted. Tiarra stood up and said she was heading out to meet someone, a friend named Travis. She didn't give much detail, just said it would be a quick meetup, maybe an hour or so, and that she'd be back to hang out with Aaron afterward. The name Travis didn't ring any bells for either Aaron or Cannon. It wasn't someone she had mentioned before, and in close-knit circles like theirs, it was strange for a new name to pop up like that. But she seemed calm, casual, like it wasn't a big deal. So no alarms went off. She didn't take her car. She didn't ask anyone for a ride. She left on foot. Tiarra was wearing a pink shirt, a black North Face jacket, Levi jeans, a pair of sneakers, likely Jordans, and a royal blue beanie pulled over her head. She walked out into the night alone, heading off into the chilly Greensboro evening. No one realized it then, but that moment was the last time anyone would ever see her. Cannon and Aaron went back inside her grandmother's apartment after she left. They watched a bit more TV, then eventually wandered back to Aaron's place to play video games. Just a normal Thursday night. But by 9:30 p.m., something started to feel wrong. Normally, Tiara would have been texting Aaron even if she was only gone for an hour. But there was nothing. No texts, no calls, just silence. At some point that night, Cannon likely headed home while Aaron decided to return to Tiara's grandmother's apartment, waiting for her to walk back through the door. But the minutes turned to hours and still, she didn't return. Aaron kept texting, kept calling, but all of his attempts went straight to voicemail. That was completely out of character for Tiara. Her phone was never off. She was always in communication with someone, especially someone she was dating. After a while, Aaron gave up and went to sleep, assuming maybe she stayed with a friend or that she'd explain everything in the morning. But morning came, and Tiara was still gone. Around 7 a.m., Aaron got up for an appointment, still holding on to hope that maybe she'd be back at her grandmother's place when he got there. But the apartment was quiet. No Tiara. He tried calling again, nothing. Straight to voicemail. At this point, the worry became panic. Right after his appointment, Aaron rushed back to her grandmother, Vanessa's apartment, woke her up, and told her what he was now sure of. Tiara was missing. The fear set in fast. Tiara's purse and ID were still in the apartment. Her phone charger was still plugged in, untouched. It didn't look like she had come home at all. And if she had planned to be gone for more than an hour, why wouldn't she have taken any of that? Vanessa, shaken, started calling Tiara's phone herself, still straight to voicemail. That's when she picked up the phone and called Danielle, Tiara's mom. And with those few chilling words, Tiara didn't come home last night, a family's world was shattered. From the very first moment Tiara didn't come home, her mother Danielle knew something was deeply wrong. This wasn't a situation where a teenager stormed out after a fight or went off the radar for some space. Tiara was responsible, consistent, communicative. She always told someone where she was going, and most of all, she never let her phone die. That phone might as well have been an extension of her hand. She always carried a charger, even if she was just stepping out for an hour. But now, over 12 hours had passed. No texts, no calls, phone completely dead. That wasn't Tiara. By noon the next day, Danielle was done waiting. She went to talk to Aaron, Tiara's cousin, and one of the last people to see her the night before. Aaron told her that Tiara had mentioned meeting someone, a guy named Travis. He didn't know much more than that. Just that Tiara had said she'd be gone for a little while and that she'd be back later. But that name Travis, it didn't sit right with Danielle. They didn't know anyone in the family by that name, not even a distant friend. So Danielle did what any mother would do. In a moment of panic, she sat down at the computer and pulled up Tiara's Facebook. She combed through the entire friends list, searching for any name that resembled Travis, real names, nicknames, aliases, even names with weird spellings. But nothing, not a single match. Then she took it a step further. Danielle opened up Tiara's private messages. And that's when things began to shift. She found a string of recent messages between Tiara and someone very familiar, an ex-boyfriend. They had been talking frequently that entire week. In fact, they had met up multiple times, and none of Tiara's close family had known about it. Suddenly, the pieces started coming together in Danielle's mind. There was no Travis. She was convinced this mystery man Tiara said she was meeting was actually her ex, using a fake name. Maybe Tiara didn't want her family or Aaron to judge her for talking to him again, so she used the name Travis to avoid suspicion. And it made sense this particular ex had never been popular with the family. Danielle described him as the classic bad boy. He had a car. He came off confident, even cool. And at one point, that excitement might have pulled Tiara in, but the shine wore off quickly. She realized they weren't good for each other, and she tried to cut ties. The problem was, he wouldn't go away. According to the messages, Tiara was never the one initiating contact. He kept reaching out relentlessly, And being the kind-hearted person she was, Tiarra had a hard time drawing a harsh line. She didn't want to hurt people. She always believed in staying friends, even when it wasn't the healthiest choice. But now, all of that kindness may have led her into the hands of the last person she should have trusted. Even so, Danielle still clung to hope. Maybe Tiarra had just snuck off to a friend's house. Maybe she'd made a mistake, a bad decision, sure, but not something she couldn't come back from. Danielle admitted for the first time in her life, she hoped her daughter had simply run off, that it was just normal teenage rebellion, that she'd walk through the door any minute. But when 8 p.m. rolled around and there was still no sign of her, Danielle made the call. Tiarra was officially reported missing to the Greensboro Police Department. Police arrived at the apartment complex that same night, and from the beginning they agreed. Something felt off. Tiarra had been thrilled about starting college. She had been in high spirits all week. She had a close-knit relationship with her family. No fights, no secret troubles, no warning signs. And most importantly, she'd left behind all of her things. This wasn't a girl who ran away. Danielle told investigators everything about the so-called Travis, about the Facebook messages, about the ex. She handed over the message logs and said clearly, he might know something. While police began the process of tracing Tiarra's phone and locating the ex, her family sprang into action. They refused to sit back and wait. Flyers were printed, dozens were handed out. The family knocked on doors, taped photos to cars, and spoke to anyone they could in the Stony Brook complex. But not a single person remembered seeing Tiarra that night. She had vanished from a public parking lot in a residential complex just yards away from home, and not one soul saw what happened. Phone records showed Tiarra's phone was still on and active as of 8:30 p.m. that night. It pinged in the complex lot right where she was last seen before going completely dark. Either the battery died or someone turned it off. There were no outgoing calls, no texts, nothing. Eventually, police tracked down the ex-boyfriend. His name has never been released publicly. And when they brought him in for questioning, his reaction raised eyebrows. He lied. At first, he claimed he hadn't spoken to Tiarra at all, tried to act like they hadn't been in contact. But once detectives confronted him with the Facebook logs, he changed his story. Yes, they had been talking, and yes, they met up that night. He admitted Tiarra met him in the parking lot, sat in his car, and they talked for about 30 minutes. But he claimed that around 9 p.m., Tiarra got out and walked back toward the apartment building. That was the last time he ever saw her, or so he said. But something about that didn't add up. If they were parked right there, he should have seen her make it to the door. That complex wasn't massive, and it was freezing that night, January, in North Carolina. Why would Tiarra linger outside alone in the cold? Police seized his car and ran full forensic tests. They searched for DNA, hair, fingerprints, anything that might suggest Tiarra had been harmed inside that vehicle. But they found nothing. With no evidence to hold him, they had to let him go and shift their focus. Next, they looked into another of Tiarra's exes, a young man named Trey. But unlike the first ex, Trey was cooperative, emotional, and heartbroken. He spoke openly to police, even contacted Tiarra's mom directly to assure her that he had nothing to do with her disappearance. Danielle confirmed they had ended things on good terms. They just wanted different things. There had never been any drama. So the case stalled. There were no suspects, no solid leads, no security footage. And the most disturbing part? Tiarra hadn't left in a car. She didn't call anyone for a ride. She was right there, just steps from her door. And in that tiny window of time, she disappeared. Could someone have been watching, waiting, lurking just out of sight? On January 11th, the day Tiarra was supposed to begin her first college class, her case was turned over to the Crimes Against Persons Squad. Officers canvassed the entire apartment complex again, this time pushing deeper into the surrounding woods, the creeks, the culverts. They searched for anything, a jacket, a shoe, a strand of hair, anything that could lead them to Tiarra. But there was nothing. The community began organizing their own searches. Flyers and billboards went up across town. Family, friends, and complete strangers banded together to search every corner near Stony Brook. They walked in teams, checked parked cars, combed through underbrush. And still no trace. Tips began trickling in. One came from a sanitation worker who claimed he saw a girl matching Tiara's description wandering along a road in High Point, about 20 minutes west of Greensboro. She looked disoriented, like she didn't know where she was going. Then another caller said they saw a girl who looked like Tiara on Textile Drive, a quiet residential road about 8 miles from her home. It was strange. No real reason to be walking in that area unless you lived there. Were these sightings legit, or just hopeful guesses? Her family feared the unthinkable, something no loved one wants to imagine. That maybe Tiara wasn't just missing. Maybe she was being moved. Maybe she was still out there, caught in something darker. Human trafficking. And the horror of it all? That someone might be holding her, right now. If you know Greensboro, North Carolina, then you know the city has two faces. On the surface, it doesn't look like the kind of place where someone could just disappear. But peel back the layers and things start to feel different. Yes, there's beauty, community, and history here, but there's also crime, serious crime, and most disturbingly, human trafficking. Greensboro sits at the crossroads of several major highways arteries that stretch across state lines and deep into underworld networks. It's a well-known reality among investigators. If someone were trying to make a person vanish, this area would be a prime location. That's what made one early tip so terrifying. Not long after Tyarra Williams disappeared, someone contacted police with a disturbing claim. Her body was in the back of a tractor trailer, parked in a lot not far from her apartment complex. Authorities and family rushed there immediately, scouring every single trailer on the lot. They checked every corner, cracked open every compartment, but nothing. No signs of Tiara, no signs of foul play. Was it a cruel hoax, a rumor twisted into horror, or worse, a real lead that came just too late? It's hard to imagine what her family felt walking through that lot, hoping for answers, dreading the kind they might find. By February 8th, over a month after Tiara vanished, authorities went back to square one this time, focusing their search around the apartment complex itself. They had no other concrete leads, and if something terrible had happened to her, logic suggested it happened nearby. The search was thorough, but winter hadn't let up. Many of the creeks and drainage cols were frozen solid, hiding anything that might be beneath. They had to wait until spring for a proper sweep. Meanwhile, Tiara's loved ones weren't sitting still. Her family turned to Facebook, the streets, the community. They put up flyers, organized awareness posts, and refused to let her name disappear with the snow. Then just when things were quieting down, the case took a chilling turn. At the end of February, tragedy struck again. Trey, an ex-boyfriend of Tiara's, was found shot to death outside his apartment. A shocking twist. Naturally, the question came up. Could this be connected to Tiara's disappearance? Was there something Trey knew? Something he saw? Was Tiara caught up in something darker than anyone realized? The timing was too eerie to ignore, but the truth turned out to be simpler, and somehow sadder. His roommate had killed him during a petty argument. No connection to Tiara's case, except for this: she wasn't there to grieve. She couldn't attend the funeral of someone she'd once cared deeply about. She was just gone. The investigation slowed down again in March. The weather was still a barrier, and tips were drying up. But then came a message that reignited everything, and it came from a Waffle House nearly 400 miles away, in Jessup, Georgia. A server there reached out through Facebook, convinced she had seen Tiara multiple times. She described a young woman coming in with a group, but the girl never looked like she belonged. She barely made eye contact, didn't talk much, and seemed nervous, or even scared. The server said she'd been watching her come in more than once, and something felt off every time. That was all Tiara's grandfather, Darryl, needed to hear. Without waiting, he jumped in his car and drove 6 hours straight to that Waffle House. He sat in the parking lot for days watching, waiting, hoping that maybe, just maybe, the next time the door opened, he'd see his granddaughter, that he could bring her home. But she never came back. The server, however, stood by her story. She insisted the girl she saw looked just like Tiarra, and Darryl refused to give up. He started canvassing the area, handing out missing person flyers to businesses, gas stations, and local hotels. And then another possible break. A hotel manager told Darryl he recognized Tiarra's face. He said a known pimp frequently came into the hotel with different girls, and one of them looked a lot like her. Authorities were notified immediately. When the man showed up again, they moved fast, questioned him and the women he was with. But the answer was heartbreaking. It wasn't her. Just a girl who looked like her. A painful false alarm. But it proved something. People cared. Strangers in a completely different state were looking for Tiarra, hoping she was okay, hoping they could help. Tips continued to pour in, some suggesting she was in trafficking networks, others pointing to ads on Craigslist and other shady corners of the internet. Each sighting, each claim, each sliver of hope was met with investigation, but nothing concrete ever came from them. Still, Darryl wouldn't stop. He took matters into his own hands, driving across the country, going straight into trafficking hotspots, seedy motels, dangerous neighborhoods, and underground clubs. He'd once been a bail bondsman, and he used that experience to navigate dark spaces that most people wouldn't dare walk into. He carried cash, sometimes $10,000 at a time, and would walk up to people and say, "You've got a limited time. Bring her out now or the reward disappears." He believed with every fiber of his being that Tiarra was still out there, that someone was keeping a secret, and that one day, money would loosen their lips. Surprisingly, police supported his efforts. Their relationship with Tiarra's family was solid, respectful, collaborative. They believed Darryl was able to gather information they couldn't, so they let him keep pushing. But months passed, and still, nothing. By May of 2016, the weather had warmed up. Investigators returned to the complex and searched again, this time, scouring every inch of those creeks and drainage areas that had been frozen in winter. Still, no signs of Tiarra. Her family regrouped, re-examined every detail, and they returned to a name that had always left them uneasy: Aaron, Tiarra's boyfriend at the time. Something about the night she disappeared never sat right. He'd known she was going out to meet another guy, but he hadn't asked who, hadn't tried to stop her, hadn't even followed up. It felt odd. And Tiarra had recently told her mom that she was thinking of ending the relationship. She said he was a good guy, but they weren't truly compatible. She didn't want to hurt him, but she was planning to break things off. Her family wondered, did he already sense it? Could there have been an argument? Police questioned him again. At first, Aaron was hurt. He said it felt like betrayal. Tiarra's disappearance had destroyed him, and now people were looking at him as a suspect. He opened up about the depression he'd fallen into, the guilt he carried, the what-ifs that haunted him daily. He told them, "I was trying to be the cool boyfriend, the trusting one. I didn't want to seem controlling." But now he just wished he'd asked more questions. Maybe he could have stopped her. Maybe he could have saved her. Despite his pain, he understood why her family had doubts. He said if the roles were reversed, he'd be asking the same questions, and he cooperated fully. Eventually, Aaron was ruled out. Then, in June 2016, another tip came in, this one from a family member. They believed they saw Tiarra in the parking lot of a DMV in Greensboro. The person they saw looked like her, and when the family member called out Tiarra's name, the woman stopped, turned, and said, "I don't know who that is, but I'll pray for her." It sent chills down their spine. They hadn't said Tiarra was missing, so why would a stranger immediately say she'd pray for her? Police checked the surveillance footage, and while the woman did resemble Tiarra, her mother confirmed it wasn't her. That moment, like so many in this case, was a cruel roller coaster. Hope followed by heartbreak. Years passed. In 2018, the TV series Disappeared featured Tiarra's story. In 2020, NCMEC released a tribute video full of family photos, trying to breathe new life into the investigation. Tiarra's family gave interview after interview until they finally had to stop. The emotional toll was just too much. In 2023, Greensboro Police announced something promising: 2 retired detectives were brought on specifically to review cold cases, including Tiara's. One of them said a tip had come in a witness who had sat on information for over 6 years. It ultimately led nowhere, but it proved something. There are still people out there walking around who know something. They've just stayed silent. Investigators now believe someone living near the apartment complex at the time has information. And maybe they've moved. Maybe they've forgotten the details. Or maybe they just need a reminder that this case is still open, that Tiara is still missing. If you visit the Facebook page dedicated to Tiara, you'll see the same thing year after year. Birthday wishes from her mom, posts filled with heartbreak, photos of a girl frozen in time, and one post dated August 7, 2016, still echoes loud. To the person involved in her disappearance, I know you're watching. I know you checked to see what we know. Just know we haven't stopped. We will never stop. This case is still open. The fight is still alive. And everything happens in God's time and God's way. Don't let your soul get comfortable, because one day we will find her. This is True Crimes by Dominic, and I want to thank you for sticking with Tiara's story. If you have any information at all, no matter how small it could be the key, I've included contact details in the description below. Please, speak up. And before you go, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, do you think Tiara was trafficked? Or did someone close to her know more than they've ever admitted? The search for Tiara hasn't ended, and neither has the fight.